Lovely to have you here, Glenn.
It's great being back here.
How long has it been since you were here last?
Well, there's this pandemic kind of interrupted coming for a while, so it's been a while.
That little thing.
Yeah.
And here I was. I just said we're going to leave the pandemic behind, and if they invite me back next year, I'm not going to talk about it.
I'm at a disadvantage. You just gave a great presentation, but they didn't have it back in the room where I was waiting, so I didn't hear anything you said. So I don't know that, and I don't know what you were saying about AI and all these other wonderful things. So it'll be interesting what's going to come out now.
Well, actually, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to make you do the talking. But no, what I did say about the pandemic and leaving it behind is that, Focus Rights projections, we showed that 2023, we exceeded in gross bookings, global gross bookings, 2019.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected in what you're seeing. The results last year were fantastic, of course.
Yeah, so we're all happy about that.
So tell me, are you seeing some of that? Because we expect growth rates to moderate in the coming years. What are you seeing in the first couple of months of 2024?
Yeah, so we did do our earnings call last week or 2 weeks ago now. Boy, time moves so rapidly. And we were positive, and we talked about the first quarter, what we're seeing. We put out some projections, et cetera. But one of the things I really try to emphasize is not looking at the short term. That's what the people do, in London, in the city, or in Wall Street, in New York, and the financial people. They're all thinking about what's going to happen, not only next quarter, sometimes next week. That's not the way we should be viewing our business, our industry. We should always be looking to the long term. How can we develop our products, our services that will serve our customers for the long run? So I always try and push back when people ask me, what's going to happen in 2024 or what's going to happen next month? That's not the way I view our industry, our business, not how we plan. And I really know one thing, and that is travel will continue to increase in the long run because people love to travel. So as long as the world's GDP continues to increase, which it will over the long run, our travel industry will do even better.
Couldn't agree more. I think that desire to travel has really been also reinforced a little by not being able to travel for a little while. But more so put the short term aside, but in terms of the long-term trends, what are you seeing? What do you expect to see in terms of some of the demographics, how that'll impact perhaps travel?
The demographics I don't look at too much so in terms of, because we're so global and we are always looking the entire world population to travel. But in terms of the long term, one of the things that's so exciting, and you were just mentioning about things like AI, technology continues to advance, and our question is always, how can we use technology to make travel easier? We all know how incredibly frustrating travel still can be so many times, whether it's the very early just trying to do the discovery part, trying to select what you want, making sure it's the right thing, it's the right price, and then actually starting to actually execute your travel. And then if there's a problem, trying to solve the problem, it's a very frustrating thing. A lot of people are very unhappy about the way this process goes. Couldn't it be easier? And that's where technology can come in and truly make it better. I look back to 30 years ago, 40 years ago, really, when I would travel and my family, my parents, they would go to a travel agent. And some of you are so young, you don't even know what that is. It's a human being who would actually help plan travel for you. And it was wonderful because that person knew what you would like because she knew you, she knew your family. And she'd select a few things that she thought would be good, and you said, okay, maybe to this, maybe to that. It was interactive. And then you chose it and you gave her a check, again, for the young people. That's the way money would transfer on paper. You don't know about that, but there's things, checks.
Or cash.
Right, well, even more, they don't know about that either. Right, and then you would go on your travel, and if anything went wrong, you just called her, and she fixed it magically. And now we think, boy, it's not like that, but technology could make that. And the idea of AI with this interactivity, being able to use technology, and it'll be so much better than it was with that human travel agent because the database knows so much more. The way that the neural networks can work in terms of really understanding what your needs are or not, and all the sensors, all the information that comes in that you didn't know 40 years ago that your plane was going to be delayed, but now we can use that information so you don't have to go to the airport for another hour. There's so many ways to improve this process, and that's what we at Booking are working on and trying to solve.
So you touched on two things there that I think connect to what I wanted to talk about. One is the connected trip, right? That's been a big part of your strategy, where you want to go, about sort of that ease of making the connections between different parts of the trip. Talk about that a little bit. What's missing in perhaps your plans, or where are you, I guess, at the moment,
Right.
and where would you like to be?
Right. So the idea of the connected trip, that's a shorthand, a way to give a name to a much more complicated process that we are building, which is to try and take all elements of travel, all the parts that are so frustrating to people, and bring it together and make it easier. This is our North Star, what we're building towards. Now, this is taking, and will always take, a long time to build something so complex, and it requires so many elements to bring in, because you're dealing with a lot of old technology, old systems, and trying to bring it together and merge it together in a way that it'll actually work seamlessly. We are very early in this, and I use different analogies, depends on what part of the world I am. You pick a sports analogy or decide what sport to use for which area. So if we say football, we'll say, well, the early parts of the first half, it just started. But we're making great progress. So one of the areas that's very important, and we consider the foundational part of it, is you have to have a payment system to make this really work well. So we have made great progress in creating our payments platform to be able to buy different ways and be able to bring the money to a supplier in different ways that makes it easier. So an example, a very easy example, is if we had a traveler, let's say from China, who's coming to Europe, and the person in China wants to pay in Alipay, let's say, but you have a small hotelier in, let's say, Switzerland. They don't know how to take Alipay, they don't know. And then let's say there's a private taxi that would come from the airport to the hotel in Switzerland. Well, that person doesn't know how to take Alipay. We can put that together, take the money from the traveler and get it in the Alipay form, and then bring it to the supplier in euros in their bank account. That's the thing that makes it easier. Now, in addition, you have things like FX. You have one person paying in one currency, you have a person getting paid in another currency. Now, the way we've done it in the past can be very, very expensive. I think everybody here would know that. If you used, say, a credit card, for example, that was issued in your own country, and you used it to pay in another country, and you got this giant fee on top of the actual cost. These are tremendous costs in there. We ourselves, by taking all the volume that we have, we can hedge that ourselves and make it cheaper for everybody, cheaper for the traveler, cheaper for the supplier, and we can actually make a little itty-bitty profit in doing that service for both of them. We all win in that.
How's that going? Do you
It's
see
going
a lot
well.
of adoption?
It's definitely going well. We're making progress in all areas. But again, it's going to take us a long time to get there. One of the issues, one of my concerns always is that here we have a thing that we want to make things better for the supplier, the hoteliers, the car rental people, the rides, the attractions, all that. We want to make things better for the traveler. Do something better for them too. This is win-win-win. Yet sometimes you are having discussions with regulators and they look at you and they say, well, we're not so sure we like that so much. And I'm like, why? This is better for everybody. What is the issue? I've yet to get a real solution, a real answer to this.
Is that perhaps the downside of being one of the largest players in the market? The largest player in the market.
Well, I think there's no doubt that when you are big, people may look at you with a little more closer examination. But when people say we're big, it's true, we're not a small company, but when you look at the industry, we're rather small in terms of the total market. So nobody really knows for sure how big is the travel industry. And to make round numbers, some people say, well, let's say 3 trillion US dollars. Not bad, it's a round number, it's easy enough to go with. Okay, so I announced the 2 weeks that we did our earnings call, we said we had 151 billion US dollars worth of travel transactions in our business go through our business. 151 billion, 3 trillion. That's a really small percentage point. And I think we all know when we go to choose to travel, we know there's just an incredible number of choices to make. Different suppliers, different services. There's so many different ways to do it. Even something as simple as hotels. Let's take hotels, for example. When somebody decides they want to go to a hotel, there are so many ways to do it. You can go to the hotel direct. You can call the hotel using your phone. You can go to the hotel's app site. You can go to their website. Okay, in Europe, for example, usually it's about a little more than half of all bookings are going directly to the hotels. But wait, there are other ways. You can go to an online travel agency like us or many of our competitors, or you can go to a meta site like Trivago, or you can go to Google, a hotel finder, or if you don't like that so much, you can even just show up and go to the door. That's another way to do it. So many ways to do it. So when somebody tells me like, well, you're very big, yes, we are big, but we're tiny compared to the overall size of the market.
That didn't quite wash, though, with the eTraveli decision. And I know you've said you're going to appeal.
Absolutely. I mean, the decision by the commission regarding our working with eTraveli, trying to buy eTraveli, who we'd have had a very long and fruitful connection working together on a commercial basis, the decision to not allow us to do this was wrong on the law, it's wrong on the facts, and it's bad policy. And it's a shame, because if we had been allowed so far to do this instead of having now to go through this whole appeal process, we'd be able to make the flight product, the flight services, so much better for the travelers, and we'd also be able to help our airline suppliers do a better job too. Win, win, win for everyone. But they made the decision, we will appeal it, I expect to win it, but it'll be much further down the road, and we will not have been able to innovate the things we want to make flights a better process. And I don't know about you, but I still do not believe that the flight service product, the way we buy our flights, the way we deal with it, is nearly as good as it should be.
But is this decision really hurting you? Because in the earnings calls, you also talked about the growth in flights, and flights being, an entry point for Booking.com. So, it doesn't seem to be kind of hurting you. Maybe you're right. I mean, there's still friction in the process for booking.
No, look, it's going great. Look, I love the fact that our flight business last year was up 58% versus the year before. That's wonderful. But just because it did that, that's not saying that we couldn't do even better by providing even better service to people. And that's what I really want to do. I want to make it so that people, instead of, look, when you try and do your travel, how many times do you step away from your phone or your computer? You're just, I can't do it anymore. And when you actually buy something, when you finally buy, let's say you start with flights, you buy that flight, you finally, after all your searching, all your deciding which flight, how much, you got your seats, you're finally done, you press buy. How many people then say, okay, now I'm going to buy my hotel? Practically such a few number. Why? Because it's terrible, it's exhausting, and instead you want to just go to the bar and get a drink. It's been so frustrating. That's the problem.
Or maybe you just want to put it out there and tell the AI to create an itinerary.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Shouldn't that be the way it is? And that's what AI will be able to do. Help create the entire thing from start to end, provide it all together like that old human being did for us decades ago, only do it better. That's what we're looking to create.
So talking about AI, you have different approaches among the different portfolio companies at Booking Holdings. Can you talk about sort of how in your role as at Booking Holdings, how you kind of think about it? With Priceline's doing things with Penny, you have the Booking Trip Planner. Just kind of tell us a little bit more.
So we have different companies within our overall group. It's the Booking Holdings Inc. is the holding company. But then we have Booking.com, we have Priceline, we have Agoda, we have a number of different companies, and they are doing AI by different ways and different forms and exploring different things. And we also have to be a little careful. When we say AI is a very general term. It means a lot of different things. Nowadays, because of all the buzz about generative AI and large language models, when you say AI, they generally jump right there. But there's a lot of other things way before that. We've been using machine learning models forever. This has had many other people. That's a long time we've been doing. That's AI too. But in generative AI, which is the exciting thing that we're all talking about trying to build out, we do have different products by different services. And one of the great things is enabling different groups of technologists to think creatively and come up what they think is best and try it out. So at Booking.com, we have a thing called our Trip Planner, our AI Trip Planner. And that's enabling you to go in and start. You type in, you may want to go somewhere, whatever, however, there's so many different ways to start it because it is AI. You can put in whatever you want, and it'll help build out what your needs are. And one of the great things is it'll come up with a list of hotels, let's say, and you can then book those hotels right within the Trip Planner process. Now, another thing that's really interesting is at Priceline, their product, they call their AI product, they call it Penny. And they started it out not at the top of the funnel, but they started first developing at the bottom of the funnel. So, and you may have noticed this yourselves, when you're buying something, particularly say a hotel, right before you press buy, you may have a question. Now, before we came up with Penny, somebody would have to go back up the funnel, try and find the information. But at Penny, there's a chat box. You can just type in right there your question, and it will find the answer and bring it right back to you. So for example, one of the most popular questions people ask right before they press buy is there free parking or parking at all? Good thing, if you go back up, it could take a long way. Is there parking? Not where is that? Right. Another one really popular I talk about a lot is people say, can I bring my dog? Not an unreasonable question, you have a dog, right? But what's really fascinating is how it gets interactive. Because let's say we come back and say, yes, this hotel allows you to bring your dog. Then the question is, but I have a very big dog. And then it goes back, well, how big is your dog? Well, my dog is 50 kilos. That's a very big dog. Are you sure it's a dog? And that can go back and forth. And that's really helpful. Instead of, imagine how long it would take you to find out, can my 50 kilo dog, whatever, it's not going to.
And eventually you end up calling the hotel because the information's not available in the chatbot.
In the old way, yes. Under the new way, we have, now sometimes you still have to do that. And the fact is, we have this, we have obviously a lot of issues where you have to make sure it's right, because what we don't want to have, and this is another problem in AI, is they call them hallucinations. And that is basically just a way of saying putting out stuff that's not right. And we always want to make it right. And it's early. So I've played with our products, our AI products, and I've seen some things that say, that's not exactly right. And we're developing it. But that's not different than any other new type of technology, where things take time to develop into a optimized, much better route. You got to start somewhere. And I do believe we are in a pole position. We have over 400 technologists working on AI in Amsterdam. That's a large number of people be working on that, and it's good. And I really believe that we will come up with something much better than what we've had in the past, and I believe that in the end is good for the industry.
That's the second time you've used the pole position analogy. You said that, I think, in response to an analyst question also. What does that mean? Because just having more people working on it, doesn't mean you're ahead of the game, but certainly that's something that you truly believe. So tell me how you think sort of you have the advantage there.
I look at our products and I look at our competitors' products and I feel our products are better. It's one of the ways we do that. One of the ways to do it too is see in terms of usage, are people beginning to enjoy using it and such, and we are seeing increased usage of it. But it really does. This does require people. And that's, one of the things is, this is what I really like is the fact that this is based in Amsterdam for Booking.com, right? And I like that because I really believe what's important for Europe is to develop our own technologies to be a leader. The idea of just leaving the playing field and let the giants in Silicon Valley or the giants in Shanghai or in Mumbai or Bengaluru or in Brazil, and let them develop all the new technologies and we'll just sit back and not. That's crazy to me. We have to develop technologies here to develop the jobs, the industries for the future. And one of the things that concerns me sometimes is the regulatory framework sometimes is not conducive to innovation, to investment, to developing new things, and that I'm concerned about. When I look at some statistics in terms of how much R&D is being put in by companies in Europe versus other parts of the world, I feel that we may be falling behind, and that is a problem.
And I know talking about tech and innovation, it's something that you're passionate about. Other than the regulatory framework, what are some headwinds and tailwinds that you see when it comes to that landscape in Europe especially? And how do you, encourage that innovation, that ecosystem?
All right, so let me take the question and just play a little bit with where we're going here. So if the question really is how can we better develop our industry, our travel industry? What can we do to make it a better industry? And then I got where I said earlier, well, technology will help a lot. Okay, how do we develop technology? What can we do that would make things better for technology in Europe? And one of the things that would be greatly helpful is having regulations that are smart regulations. See, one of the problems that can happen is that you end up with regulations that deter investment. It creates a spiral that makes it harder to develop because people aren't willing to put money into good ideas and new things. So, for example, we now have, let's go back to the e-travel example, okay? And so, which, as I mentioned, how wrong I think that is. But there's a secondary effect of that is, if companies like an e-travel that was venture funded, if those companies can't exit to provide a return to the investors, that then creates a problem for future investments into new technologies, new companies, et cetera. And you talk to the VCs, you talk to the people who are at the foundational level, and they are saying things like, well, that's part of the problem of trying to build up technology in Europe. Because even if you build it up, then you can't exit. And that's something I don't think the regulators think enough about. What are the secondary, tertiary, what are the spillover effects of decisions that are made? And that is something that is very important. If you look, why is Silicon Valley spinning out so many incredible new technologies, new businesses, et cetera? Well, is it because they're smarter? I don't think so. I think the European education and the universities are as good as anywhere. So what is the problem here? Is it their lack of capital? Well, I think there's capital, but it's not being invested. Why is that? And you look into the differences, and I would say part of it is to the fragmentation. You say, well, it's, the different countries, and we're not going to be able to achieve scale as quickly in Europe. That was the idea of a European Union, knock down those barriers, and that actually was helpful. But what we see happening now, unfortunately, is you see some of the individual states coming up with their own regulatory frameworks that make it more difficult. Now, I really believe that if we can try and emphasize the need for regulations across all the EU, that would be very helpful. And Brussels is definitely trying to do that. And what we need to do is when a single individual country, a state, comes up with their own regulations, we need Brussels to say, hey, we are dealing with this at the EU level. Please let us do it. And that would make it much easier for all the companies that are trying to develop new things.
That brings to mind, one of the larger exits recently was Home2Go in the short-term rental space. And I do want to talk about short-term rentals with you. Booking.com, you've always had this integrated approach to content, right? You don't sort of separate out. If I go and search for accommodation, I'm going to see hotels, I'm going to see alternative accommodations.
Yeah.
I actually said in my presentation that given just how much short-term rentals have sort of grown in the last few years, alternative accommodation seems like, a term that's perhaps a little bit
It's a mouthful.
outdated. But talking about that, I mean, you said you had 7.4 million listings,
Correct.
right? 33% of room nights coming from the short-term rental
Correct.
market, and you're still trying to grow that, especially in the U.S.
Yep.
What are you seeing there, and what's the strategy thinking behind sort of that focus on short-term rentals?
Well, here's the thing is, what do people want? If people want a short-term rental, we want to be able to provide it. So we are always looking to make sure that we are providing what the customer wants. Travelers who want their short-term rentals, we want to make sure we are offering every possible type, form, price that they want. Now, the reason we put that together with hotels is based on experience. And the experience is people come to our site and they go back and forth. They search, they look at hotels. Then in the same session, they look at some homes. Then back to hotels, homes. And then they make a choice based on what their needs are. So we've always believed that by putting it all together, we're providing an easier way because you can compare and contrast all the different types of properties, all the different types of accommodations in one site at one place, look at the reviews, look at the prices. We think that makes it much easier. And look, we've been growing it very well. One of the things I'm really proud of is last year, we grew our alternative accommodations very well. In the fourth quarter, we grew 19%. The very big competitor, they grew at 12%. And if you look back over the last 8 quarters or so, I believe we grew faster in alternative accommodations almost every one of those quarters. I think they beat us in 1 or 2, don't remember exactly. But that just shows that we are doing something that is good for the consumer. Because at the end of the day, the person who wins because the customer wants that. That's how you're able to get ahead, provide a better service.
Talking about big competitors, experiences is one of the things that I think, there's been a lot of focus on from your competition.
Sure. Nobody goes on a holiday to sit in the hotel.
So what are you doing in that space?
Well, we partner with a lot of different players to make sure that our travelers are able to find easy access to whatever they want to do when they show up in a destination. And this goes back to the whole idea of the connected trip. And I've had the benefit of this. So when I'm in a city, I love it when Booking.com gives an offer to me that says, hey, would you like to try this, which is right near where I am? That's very helpful. Then in addition, if I can provide a discount to the traveler, that's even better. Or skip the line for just Booking.com customers. That's another great thing that we can do. So again, it goes back to the whole thing of that idea of the connected trip, providing all the services in one spot, in one way, so we can provide better value to the traveler. At the same time, this is something that a lot of people are not aware of, provide better service to the supplier. And some people say, well, what do you mean exactly? Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have an attraction. Let's say, for example, I'm a bike rental company, and I like travelers who are visiting, let's say, Amsterdam, and get travelers who are coming to use my bike service. Well, if we partner with them and say to the bike rental person, provide us with a lower price, and we'll push that to our travelers who are in Amsterdam, that's a benefit
to the rental bike company to be able to get them more customers that they may not have been able to get. It's a cheaper way to market their product. And it's good for the traveler, it's good for the bike rental company, and we're able to make profits on our business doing it that way. That's the type of thing. Now, some people say, oh, we don't like the idea of bringing it all together. Why? Who is against this, and why are they against this? That's the thing I still am not being able to find anybody to tell me this is not good.
Ultimately, this goes to, removing the friction in the process,
Totally.
right? Does that mean at some point you're going to think about becoming a super app? And I put that in quotes.
Well, you hear a super app. Look, again, our idea is to provide all forms, all ways for travel, everything somebody needs in travel, and provide a way that suppliers can access customers in an easy, less expensive way, which we've been doing for a long time. One of the things sometimes people say, well, gee, you seem to charge a lot of money for your commissions. And I say, well, it runs around 15%, it's about what it is. Seems a reasonable amount of money. I say, and one way to look at it is like, do you remember what it was 20, 30 years ago? The cost for a hotel to distribute their rooms was significantly more expensive. I remember back when people, if you had a hotel, you would go to a wholesaler, and the wholesaler would want 30%, 40%, 50%. Crazy. Now 15%, and we do all the translations. We'll do all the content. We'll put the photos up. We'll do all the marketing that's expensive. We'll do all the customer service in your language. We'll do it in any language, all the language, everything. And all we ask is a commission if you end up with an actual customer in your hotel, in the bed, who pays the revenue for it. That seems to me a very reasonable thing. You look at Apple, they charge, 30% on their, where they're taking a 30% cut on their, 15 is extremely reasonable, even more so, because it's 15%. Hotels, as I mentioned, generally, at least half are coming direct. Hotels are anyways using us as a way to distribute those last rooms, so to speak. The last rooms that they wouldn't be able to fill otherwise. Now, the interesting thing about businesses like hotels or others is that because the leverage, the amount of money that gets spent, the first money has to pay for the mortgage from the room or the staffing and all that. But after you get to the last couple rooms, that's where all the money flows down to the profit area. And that's the interesting. So we're taking 15% of what would be something that's almost all going to go to the bottom line. That's the reason why, in the decades past, a hotel would be willing to give 50% or 40%, because they would make a profit of the remainder on that. And it's been a wonderful thing for us to be able to lower the cost of distribution over the last few decades.
But even Apple is kind of having to shift, right, with some of the decisions recently on opening up the App Store and allowing other payment apps.
Well, again, that's a different industry. I just making the point, the incredible difference in the amount that's being charged.
One question, though, and I know we only have about a minute and a half, because I do want to ask you about this. What does the DMA and the gatekeeper tag that I know is coming, what does it mean in practical terms?
Well, we'll find out. Look, we're working with the regulators and coming up with what does it mean exactly. It is disappointing when it first came out. We were kind of like, well, gee, this is an odd thing here. I mean, why do we need to be part of the DMA? We're, again, as I pointed out, a larger company than many in the travel industry, but a very, very small company compared to the others. I mean, when you see the size of Google or Meta or any of the other ones, we're a tiny little minnow. And I'm not sure what problem they're trying to solve. That seems to say, what exactly is the problem? That there's not enough competition? My God, this is the most competitive industry in the world. So what exactly are they trying to solve? But okay, this is the law, this rule, we're fine. Okay, we'll go with it because we fit the qualifications that they have put out, so we now agree. Now we say let's work cooperatively to come up with what will be the best way to implement and what are the ramifications of it or not. I honestly can't tell you yet. I can say it would be more costly to us. We are having to spend time, energy, effort, money to meet up with these new regulations. That's the problem. Anytime new regulations come in, they're not free. They can be rather expensive in terms of having to change your processes, change all the ways you do your business. That can be costly. And when we spend money on that, that means that we don't get to hire more people for this to help do innovative new things. It means it slows us down in terms of creating something better. The bad thing is we're the only travel company that is under this. So travel is a global business, we all know. So our big competitors, who are as big as we are, they don't have to fit under these new rules. They get free rein to do whatever they want. So it is a little bit odd that here in Europe, the DMA is impacting the only company in travel that is a European company. Odd, but it is what it is. So we will just do our best and work cooperatively to come up with the best way going forward.
And we'll definitely be watching that, and hopefully we'll talk about that more next time that you're here at ITB next year. Glenn Fogel, thank you very much for joining us here. Really appreciate your speaking with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.